Yoruba Council of Youths Worldwide gives Fulani herdsmen Boko Haram 7 days to leave Yoruba land. Chief of Defense Staff says Nigeria faces major threats to its existence. In international news, centrists lose big in European Union elections held over the weekend. And in sport, veteran Onome Ebi is set to become first African to play in 5 FIFA global tournaments.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The Yoruba Council of Youths Worldwide, YCYW, says Fulani herdsmen and Boko Haram must vacate the southwest region of Nigeria within 7 days. The group says it has had enough of the alleged criminal activities of the Fulani herdsmen in the southwest geopolitical zone. This ultimatum was contained in a communique signed by the group's president, Aremo Oladotun Hasan, and released to journalists after a meeting in Ile-Ife, Osun State over the weekend. The YCYW says killings and kidnappings by Fulani herdsmen and Boko Haram have heightened insecurity in the southwest region. The group said these violent activities against Yorubas and Nigerians living in Yoruba land are a gross violation of the fundamental human rights to human dignity. The group condemned the federal government's meeting with the leadership of Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria in Kebbi State and its plans to establish a radio station directed at Fulani herdsmen. It also deplored the federal government's comparison of Miyetti Allah to Afenifere and Ohaneze Ndibu. The group describes such comparison as irresponsible and reckless. The Catholic Archbishop of Abuja, John Cardinal Onoyekon, says Nigerians are getting poorer and having a feeling of hopelessness under President Muhammadu Buhari's government, and advised the president to change his leadership style if Nigeria must recover from its current socio-economic crisis. Onoyekon stated this while delivering a message at the interdenominational church service for the 2019 presidential inauguration ceremony at the National Christian Center in Abuja over the weekend. He was standing in for the President Catholic Bishops' Conference, Archbishop Augustine Akubeze. The Archbishop says this new era of government that is about to be inaugurated should be for a new opportunity for the country to change ways and review habits of governance for a better Nigeria. He said blame game and accusing fingers at others will not carry the nation far. He calls for a sincere change of heart, especially at the highest levels. Cardinal Onoyekon says deniers of the realities around us cannot build the nation. He said all is not well with the nation and all is not lost either. The Cardinal said, quote, "Our ethnic diversity is God's will and gifts that we ought to appreciate and celebrate. We should beware of those who seek to manipulate this in a game of divide and rule for selfish interest." End quote. The Chief of Defense Staff, Abayomi Olonishakin, says Nigeria's very existence is being threatened by security challenges in the country, which he says must be tackled through collective efforts. He says this is the only way to guarantee Nigeria would remain one. These observations were made by Olonishakin's representative, Deputy Director of Training, Paul Ohemo, at the closing ceremony of the Joint Campaign Planning course at the Defense Intelligence College in Abuja over the weekend. After Nigeria, Africa's largest economy suffered its first recession in more than 2 decades in 2016. The government came up with an answer. Well, it thought it could. It had believed there would be an aggressive growth, so in March 2017, an economic recovery and growth plan was launched in which the government laid out a string of bold projections to turn the slump around. But latest data from the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics show the plan has grossly missed its targets. Teju Badmus reports.
One thing is certain from the GDP figures released by the National Bureau of Statistics. Nigeria's economy is on the path of growth, but the growth is surely not as fast as many would want it. The 2.01% growth is the strongest first quarter performance since 2015 and represents an increase of 0.12 percentage points compared to the first quarter figure of 2018, which was 1.89%. But when placed against the figure of the last quarter of 2018, The real GDP growth rate declined by minus 0.38%.
Yeah, for me, if you compare the growth rate of first quarter of 2018, which was 1.89%, to the 2.01%, that's a marginal improvement. But I think the appropriate thing is to compare the latest quarter, which was the last quarter of last year, because the economic development should be a continuum. Given that even at the 2.38% we had in the last quarter of last year was still considered quite low. Our population is growing about 2.7%, and there is no society that will develop if GDP growing at below the population growth rate. So that's where the concerns are, that we should expect that the government will step on the gas pedal and fasten the rate at which the GDP is growing and which the economy is expanding.
The GDP figures clearly show despite government's diversification efforts, Nigeria is still very much an oil-dependent economy. The oil sector contracted by minus 2.40%, mainly resulting in the overall lower GDP figure for the quarter.
The growth we saw was largely driven by the non-oil sector, and principally the agriculture sector, which grew by 3.17%, because agriculture sector accounts more than 20% of the GDP. So because of the size of the agriculture sector, you saw that it propelled a growth, overall growth in the GDP. But that is not enough as we stand today, because the agriculture we practice today is largely subsistent. It's when we don't have so much of industrial agriculture.
One sector everyone had been keeping an eye on is the manufacturing sector, which has the capacity for mass employment. While it recorded a positive growth of 0.81%, the increase could be described as marginal.
A marginal growth of 0.81% is actually teetering on the edge of a decline, or a decline. So we need to ask ourselves, what do we need to do to stimulate the manufacturing sector?
The Nigerian government remains optimistic the economy will continue to grow. It's projecting a GDP growth rate of 3.01% in 2019. But it sure would be hoping the economy does better than it is currently doing for the remaining quarters to be able to meet its target.
Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of the Congo have consistently been ranked at the top of malaria endemic countries in Africa. 2 years ago, Professor Wellington Oyibo, a medical parasitologist, called on the federal government to democratize malaria diagnosis across the country. He said this would urgently escalate access to malaria testing to the communities, including the informal private sector. The government took that route and went a step further by covering them with insurance. Now Nigerians are benefiting from these malaria testing treatments at no cost, and Frank Chana has more.
Ijeoma Imezue is visiting her local pharmacy in Abuja, Nigeria. She is once again being tested for malaria. This time, she will not shoulder the cost alone if the results are positive. She is covered by health insurance.
It made it easier for me to get to a pharmacy that is registered with Wella Health, and it's affordable, it's cheap. I pay for a month, I do monthly subscription, and I can go as much as I want to talk about malaria and tell them I have malaria, and I'll get tested and I'll get the drugs.
Registered customers can freely access malaria testing. Normally, malaria tests can cost as much as $10 to $20. With insurance, they pay a flat fee of just over $1 a month. Patients who test negative are given immune boosters.
We follow the WHO guidelines, which says that we must do a rapid test at least to determine the status of this person before you give out malaria drug. And incidentally, I could tell you a high proportion of patients who walk in, when we do these tests, we find out that they don't even have malaria. It might be stress or other kind of problems that is masquerading as malaria. And so we save them from self-medication and taking the wrong medicine.
A whole lot of people die from malaria every year in Nigeria. And we cannot just leave government alone to do this. We individuals, we also need to come up with an idea, with a platform that will make this malaria easy to treat.
Nigeria is reported to have the highest cases of malaria infection globally. About 51 million cases and 207,000 deaths are recorded annually. Nigeria's caseload accounts for 30% of all cases in Africa.
Coming up, African stories. Gunmen attack yet another church in Burkina Faso. And later, international news. Centrists lose big in European Union elections, while the new Brexit party wins big in the UK.
You are watching ANN.
Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you'll need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website, annafrica.net, and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, African News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. There have been yet another attack on a Catholic church in Burkina Faso over the weekend. 4 persons were killed and other worshippers wounded. A gunman burst into the church on Sunday in Tofe in the north of the country. This is the latest in a series of attacks the government blames on Islamic militants. At least it is the 4th attack on Christians in the past month. No one has claimed responsibility. Earlier this month, gunmen killed 4 persons in a Catholic procession just days after a priest and 5 parishioners were shot dead in a church in the northern Dablo town. An explosion in a mine shaft in central Zimbabwe has claimed several lives. Bodies of 8 gold miners have been recovered so far. Ministry of Information says investigations are underway. The miners are believed to have been working illegally in the South African-owned Jumbo mine. The ministry says initial indications are that some miners exploded dynamite in one shaft, causing a collapse in another one. Illegal mining has increased in Zimbabwe as commercial miners scaled down operations because of an economic crisis. 24 illegal miners were killed in February when a dam burst and flooded a mine shaft. Egypt plans to increase the cost of electricity in July, and this has begun to generate some negative reactions by some who say the price is quite high now and may cause many to be unable to afford it. Yazur Hakim reports.
The pricing is divided in categories depending on consumption. The prices for low consumers such as households and small businesses has increased by about 19%. High consumers such as factories and heavy industry, 10%.
With the revenue, we are investing heavily in upgrading the electricity system and extending lines to the whole country to ensure everyone has power. This chart shows we have invested in the last 2 years alone about 22 billion Egyptian pounds. While from 2004 to 2017, Egypt invested 13 billion Egyptian pounds, our expenses are 11-fold in 2 years. Our target is to have 0% problems in electricity, not 0.1%, 0%.
The new prices are starting in July. They are part of a 5-year economic reform program approved by the IMF and linked with a $12 billion loan from the Bretton Woods Organization.
I expect the industrial sector to revert to solar or renewable energy to cut energy costs. However, there will be a negative effect on the short term of the subsidy cuts, such as an increase in prices of many goods because of the increase in cost of production.
The move is seen by experts as inevitable to reduce the budget deficit, but it has been met with mixed reviews from the citizens.
The cuts in subsidies lately have put pressure on the poor Egyptians. Nearly 20% increase in the low segment is too much. Already, many people have defaulted on their bill payments for months and now prices are even more. Difficult situation.
It should not be a problem because the government has already raised wages last month. It's been expected and is in tune with the new salary rise we received.
According to the government, the upcoming phase of electricity price hikes is expected next year. The aim is to completely eradicate subsidies on energy by the year 2022.
Malawi's High Court has ordered a partial election recount following 147 complaints of vote rigging by some of the parties involved in Tuesday's vote, including the main opposition party. The Electoral Council has been ordered not to announce results. Malawi Congress Party told the court it has found irregularities in results from 10 of the country's 28 districts, ranging from a use of correction fluid, unaltered vote count sheets, to the same handwriting coming from polling stations which were miles apart. The High Court says announcements of presidential results will be delayed until the results are verified through a transparent recounting of the ballot papers in the presence of representatives of political parties which contested the elections. Under Malawi election law, complaints should be resolved and results announced within 8 days of the election. When we return, international news. European Union elections have come and gone, centrists battered. And later, sport. Veteran Onome Ebi is set to become first African to play in 5 FIFA Global tournaments.
You are watching ANN.
Dear Mommy, you went out that night with the baby in your tummy, but you did not come back. The baby is very fine and she eats and sleeps a lot. Everyone says that you are in a better place, but I miss you so much. I keep asking them, where is the better place, but nobody answers me. Auntie Kemi just hugs me and says go and play. Mommy, I miss you. Please, when are you coming home?
I still do miss you, Mom. And in honor of your memory, I'm a doctor today working with the MTN Foundation to save mothers and children every day.
Ending mother and child mortality in Nigeria is dear to us. We will keep strengthening this most important bond just for you.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to happenings around the world. The European Parliament elections ended on Sunday night, and it was the 9th parliamentary election since the first direct elections in 1979. In latest news, the Brexit Party was a big winner in the European elections in the east of England, with 3 MPs elected. Since Prime Minister Theresa May announced her resignation, the new challenge has been who would fill that post. Former Secretary Boris Johnson has already declared his intention to seek that office. Conservative Party Chairman Brandon Lewis says nominations to replace May would close in 2 weeks. And most of the lawmakers say they would want a Prime Minister who would have the ability to lead them out of the European Union, a feat Theresa May was unable to accomplish.
The race for UK's next Prime Minister has barely begun after incumbent Prime Minister Theresa May announced her resignation on Friday in a tearful address. Members of the British Conservative Party are already calling for their next leader to be someone capable of leading the country out of the European Union. In front of the 10 Downing Street, the official residence and the office of the British Prime Minister, May expressed her gratitude to have the opportunity to serve the country that she loves. But she couldn't hold back her tears before she finished her emotional announcement, and immediately turned around and walked quickly towards the building, leaving reporters with a saddening back view. After failing to deliver a Brexit deal that can be accepted by the British Parliament, May's own Tory party on Wednesday started a special procedure to force her out and elect a new leader that will automatically become the next British Prime Minister.
So she ends up pleasing nobody. She neither pleases those who want a hard Brexit in her own party and those on the opposition benches and the opposition parties who want a soft Brexit. And in the end they all vote against her bill, but never in favour of her proposals, but never in favour of anything else.
Right after her announcement, Conservative Party members gathered outside of the Parliament building to discuss about the coming election of the party leader. Many called for a new PM that truly believes in Brexit and could lead the country out of the EU.
Well, this is a sad day in a way, but I called for a year for the Prime Minister to resign, so I mustn't be a hypocrite. I called for this. What I think is important now is that we rapidly move on to pick a new Prime Minister, someone that voted for Brexit in our referendum 3 years ago, someone that really believes in Brexit, and someone that can lead us out of the European Union as scheduled on the 31st of October.
Among the candidates, Boris Johnson, the former Foreign Secretary who is pro-Brexit, is expected to be one of the front-runners.
That person, to me, there's only one candidate, and that's Boris Johnson, the former Foreign Secretary.
Jeremy Hunt, the current Foreign Secretary who supported Britain remaining in the EU in the 2016 referendum, is also believed to be another candidate. Analysts say that a new PM is expected to be picked by the end of July, but whoever May's successor will be, he or she is going to face the same political chaos brought by the EU withdrawal plan. Now the options the UK has include a no-deal Brexit, a second referendum, cancelling Brexit, or major renegotiation, any one of which is expected to bring more uncertainties to the British political arena.
Since last July, China and the United States have been engaged in a trade war that has degenerated into a mutual placement of tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump has imposed tariffs on $250 billion worth of Chinese goods, while China has retaliated in like manner. It says the United States has launched the biggest trade war in economic history so far. Now, Chinese ambassador to the U.S., Qiu Tiankai, says negotiations concerning the ban on Chinese tech companies need to be based on mutual respect.
Chinese ambassador to the United States, Qiu Tiankai, responded to Washington's ban on Chinese tech companies on Thursday. Speaking to reporters on the sidelines of the 5th China-U.S. Governors Forum, which kicked off in the U.S. city of Lexington, Kentucky, Qiu said the negotiations between the two countries need to be based on mutual respect.
For any negotiation between countries, first, there should be sincerity. Second, it should be based on goodwill. And third, you should keep your word. If the negotiating parties can talk within the framework, they can reach a deal in a short period of time. If not, the deal cannot be reached no matter how much time is spent on it.
The ambassador made the comments after U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to ban Huawei in his country. Following his order, Google announced that it will stop cooperation with Huawei. The 5th China-U.S. Governors Forum is intended to promote subnational exchanges and understanding between the world's two largest economies. The Chinese ambassador said local-level cooperation between China and the United States is a bright spot in bilateral relations, and will become a new driver for bilateral cooperation.
Still ahead, sport. Veteran Onome Ebi is set to become first African to play in 5 FIFA Global Tournaments. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News in Sport. 36-year-old Onome Ebi is set to be the first African to play in 5 FIFA Global Tournaments after being named to Nigeria's Women's World Cup squad. Ebi has been part of the Super Falcons setup since making her debut in 2013 and has played in the 2003, 2007, 2011 and 2015 World Cup tournaments. Nigerian striker Bafemi Martins is looking for a new club after bouncing back from a torn hamstring injury. Martins made 59 appearances for Chinese Super League club Shanghai Shenhua before the season-ending setback in April last year. He says he's presently keeping his options open. That is in the news this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other stories, visit the social media platforms and join the conversation on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.